The sentence that shook my soul. I heard it when I wasn't supposed to. Those words, poison dressed as speech, falling from the lips I once kissed goodnight. I wish you were dead by now. That voice, my daughter's voice, it cut through me sharper than any blade. I wasn't supposed to hear it. She thought I was asleep. But the room was quiet, and my heart was too heavy to rest. So when she whispered it, after glancing at me lying there, it pierced something deeper than flesh. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't the same little girl I raised. Someone had poisoned her mind. Beloved, what do you do when the child you carried for 9 months, the one you nursed, prayed for, and sacrificed for, looks at you and wishes for your death? How do you breathe through a pain like that? This is Amara from Unbroken Courage, and today's story is one that shook me deeply, because sometimes betrayal doesn't come from enemies, it comes from your own blood. But before I tell you how Miriam faced this storm, let me ask you, have you ever felt misunderstood by someone you loved the most? Have you ever been accused of something your heart could never imagine doing? If you have, then stay with me to the very end of this story, because what Miriam discovered will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, family, and inheritance. When Miriam sat across from me in the counseling room, her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes held the kind of silence that only grief can teach. She said softly, "Amara, I don't even know where to begin. Maybe at the moment my daughter stopped calling me Mom." I nodded gently. "Start wherever your heart remembers first," she sighed. "Then I'll start with the night those words changed everything." Miriam had been a widow for almost 3 years. Her husband Thomas passed away suddenly, heart attack, in his sleep. They'd been married for over 30 years. Through struggle, love, and faith, they built a quiet, stable life together. 2 children, 1 home, a small inheritance. But what Thomas left behind wasn't just money. He left behind division. Miriam didn't realize it at first, but something began to shift in her daughter Angela right after the funeral. It was in the way she started avoiding eye contact, the way she spoke about her father's promises. At first, Miriam thought it was grief, but grief doesn't smirk when it talks about lawyers. One evening, Miriam was lying on her bed, half awake, when Angela came in. She thought her mother was asleep. Angela stood at the edge of the bed, looking down with eyes that no longer resembled the girl Miriam raised. "I wish you were dead by now," she muttered, her tone cold, detached. Then she walked out, leaving behind a silence that screamed louder than thunder. Beloved, imagine that moment, the child you gave life to, whispering death over you. Would you cry? Would you confront her? Or would you sit there, like Miriam did, too stunned to move, too heartbroken to speak? When Miriam came to see me, she said, "Amara, I didn't tell anyone for weeks. I thought maybe I misunderstood her. Maybe she didn't mean it." But deep down, she knew. Something darker had taken root. Angela believed her mother had something to do with her father's death. And though there was no evidence, no logic, grief had turned to suspicion, and suspicion had turned to hate. Miriam continued, "It's like she wants to see me gone. Maybe so she can have what's mine." I looked at her, not just as a counselor, but as a woman. "Do you think she's capable of it?" I asked carefully. Miriam hesitated. "I don't know, but Amara, sometimes when she looks at me, I see a stranger." That night after the session, I sat alone in my office long after Miriam left. Her story lingered in the air like perfume that refuses to fade. How does love rot into resentment so completely? And how do we fight evil when it wears the face of family? Beloved, Miriam's story was just beginning, because as she later found out, this wasn't just about anger or grief. It was about inheritance, manipulation, and a secret her late husband never told her. What she discovered next would change everything. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you all. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because you won't want to miss what happens next in Miriam's story. This is Unbroken Courage, where real stories of pain become lessons of power. After that night, Miriam couldn't sleep for days. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard her daughter's voice again, cold, detached, almost inhuman. "I wish you were dead by now." She tried to convince herself it was just grief talking. But grief fades. This grew. Angela began staying out late. She stopped eating at the same table, stopped calling her mother by name. And one day, when Miriam asked gently if she'd like to go to church together, Angela's response was chilling. "I don't go to church with murderers." Amar's voice soft. "Beloved, imagine hearing that from your only child." Miriam said she almost dropped her cup. "Murderer?" she whispered. But Angela was already walking away, muttering something about what people said. Now, at first, Miriam thought it was just gossip, small-town whispers, the kind that grow wings after a funeral. But she soon realized the lies were coming from somewhere close. Someone was feeding her daughter poison, someone she trusted. One afternoon, Miriam received a call from her husband's lawyer, Mr. Bennett, a calm, older man who had handled the family's estate for years. He said, "Mrs. Thomas, there's something I think you should see. Your husband left an additional document." Her heart sank. "What kind of document?" He hesitated. "Perhaps you should come in. It's better explained in person." "Beloved, you know that feeling when your spirit whispers before your mind understands?" Miriam said the moment she hung up that call, she felt it. That weight in her chest, the one that tells you the truth is coming and it won't be gentle. At the lawyer's office, Mr. Bennett handed her a thin envelope. Her name was written in her husband's handwriting, Miriam Rose Thomas. She hadn't seen that handwriting in years. It made her heart ache. She opened the envelope and found a letter and a legal note. The letter began, "My dearest Miriam, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to explain in person. Please forgive me." He wrote about a property, a small piece of land he'd purchased years before, under her name, for their retirement. But there was also something else, a clause. "Should anything happen to me, my inheritance is to remain with you until your passing. After that, it will be divided equally between our children, on one condition, that they honor you while you live." Miriam froze. Honor you while you live. It was right there, in legal print. Thomas's will wasn't just financial, it was moral. You see, beloved, the universe has a strange way of balancing itself. Thomas had written that will with wisdom, maybe even prophecy, because what Angela didn't know was that her inheritance depended entirely on how she treated the very mother she despised. But it wasn't just ignorance driving Angela, it was influence, the kind that starts as a whisper and grows into a curse. Later that week, Miriam found out who had been feeding her daughter's mind. It was her husband's sister, Aunt Celia, a woman who had always envied Miriam's marriage, her peace, her grace. Celia had convinced Angela that her mother was responsible for Thomas's death. She told her lies wrapped in half-truths, that her father had been unhappy, that Miriam had hidden things from her. Miriam said, "Amara, when I found out it was Celia, my whole body went cold." Celia had told Angela that Miriam was hiding part of the inheritance, that she'd secretly moved money, that she'd been planning to sell the house and leave Angela with nothing. The girl believed every word. Amara's tone soft but firm. "Beloved, that's the power of a bitter tongue. It doesn't need evidence, just access." Miriam tried to talk to Angela, but every conversation ended in anger. "I don't believe a word you say," Angela shouted one night. "I know what you did." "What did I do?" Miriam asked, tears welling up. "You took everything from Dad. You made him die unhappy." The lies had become her truth. Then one evening, Miriam overheard Angela on the phone, whispering. The tone was too sharp, too deliberate. "She's still alive," Angela said. "But don't worry, it won't be long." Miriam's heart stopped. She couldn't move. Was her daughter planning something? She told me in the session, "Amara, I'm not afraid to die. I've lived long enough to know death doesn't scare me, but the thought that my child could hate me enough to wish it, that's what hurts." I looked at her carefully. "Do you think she could act on it?" Miriam's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know, but I've started locking my door at night." Beloved, let that sink in. A mother locking her door because of her daughter. How does love survive that kind of betrayal? But the story doesn't end there, because Miriam wasn't as powerless as she seemed. Remember, Thomas's will. Miriam leaned forward. "A clause, a final one, that if either child acts dishonorably toward me while I'm alive, they forfeit their share entirely." Mr. Bennett nodded slowly. "You're within your rights to do that." She exhaled deeply. "Good, then let's put it in writing." Beloved, that's what wisdom looks like. When emotion wants revenge, wisdom builds protection instead. Miriam didn't yell, she didn't fight. She wrote her defense into the law. As the documents were being prepared, Mr. Bennet hesitated. "Mrs. Thomas," he said gently, "if I may ask, what happened between you and Angela?" Miriam's gaze lowered. "She believes lies," she said, "and someone she trusts is feeding them." He frowned. "Celia?" Miriam looked up, surprised. "You know?" Mr. Bennet sighed. "Thomas mentioned her once. He told me, if anything happens to me, tell Miriam to be careful around Celia." Those words hit Miriam like a lightning bolt. "Why?" she asked softly. He hesitated again, then reached into his file drawer. "I think you should see this." He handed her an old, sealed envelope. The handwriting on it was unmistakable. Thomas. She tore it open carefully. "If Celia ever tries to come between you and the children, trust what you know about her, not what she says about you. She always wanted what we had, Miriam. Always." Miriam sat frozen, the letter trembling in her hands. Thomas had known. He'd seen it coming. When Miriam told me this part in the session, her voice trembled. She said, "Amara, that letter, it was like he was still protecting me, even from the grave." I said softly, "Beloved, love like that never dies. It just changes form." After finalizing the documents, Miriam went home with a calm spirit. That evening, Angela came by unannounced. She was polite. Too polite. "Hi, Mom," she said sweetly. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on you." Miriam smiled faintly. "That's kind of you." They sat in the living room, the same one that had once been filled with laughter and board games and Thomas's humming. Now it felt colder. Angela began circling the conversation the way someone does when they have a hidden agenda. "So, have you talked to the lawyer lately?" she asked casually. Miriam stirred her tea. "I have." Angela's eyebrows twitched. "Oh, about what?" Miriam looked at her daughter calmly. "About updating things. You know how life changes." A flicker of worry flashed across Angela's face. "What kind of changes?" Miriam smiled gently. "The kind that honor what Thomas truly wanted." Angela shifted in her seat. "You know, Mom, I've been under a lot of stress. I didn't mean some of the things I said before." Miriam nodded slowly. "I believe you didn't mean some of them." Angela froze. "What do you mean?" Miriam met her eyes. "I wasn't asleep that night, Angela. I heard every word." "Beloved," the air in that room grew thick with truth, the kind of truth that strips away all pretense. Angela's face went pale. "You heard me?" Miriam nodded. "Yes, and I forgave you, but forgiveness doesn't erase consequences." Angela looked down, fidgeting with her hands. "You don't understand, Mom. Aunt Celia told me." Miriam interrupted gently. "I know what she told you." That stopped her cold. "I know," Miriam continued, "that she made you believe I took your father's money, that I caused his death. But she lied, and you believed her because it was easier than facing your own grief." Angela's lips parted, but no words came out. "I'm your mother," Miriam said firmly, "not your enemy." For the first time in years, Angela's eyes began to water. "I didn't know what to believe," she whispered. "Aunt Celia said you were going to cut me out of everything." Miriam stood up slowly. "She was right about one thing," she said quietly, "because after what you said to me that night, I realized something. Inheritance isn't about money. It's about honor." She walked to the window, her back to Angela. "I updated the will today. You'll still get your share, one day, but not because you demanded it, because you'll have to earn it by doing something you haven't done in years." Angela looked up. "What's that?" Miriam turned around, her eyes steady. "Love me without expecting payment." Beloved, that's the moment power shifted. Because the strongest people don't need revenge, they write wisdom into the future. Angela left that night without another word. 2 days later, Aunt Celia showed up at Miriam's house furious. "I heard what you did," she spat. "You poisoned that girl against her own family." Miriam smiled calmly. "No, Celia, you did that yourself." Celia's voice trembled with rage. "You think you're clever, don't you?" "No," Miriam replied, "just protected." She opened her front door and gestured politely. "Now, if you don't mind, I have peace to tend to." Celia stormed off, her pride louder than her footsteps. Beloved, some storms don't come to destroy you. They come to reveal who was truly standing beside you when the wind blew. And for Miriam, that revelation brought both pain and peace. Because sometimes you lose a daughter for a while to find a woman later. But that part of the story, the redemption, the healing, the moment Angela comes back home, that's where the true miracle unfolds. And that, beloved, is what I'll share next. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and if this story spoke to your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next part will show you what real forgiveness looks like when love has been through fire. This is Unbroken Courage, where strength speaks softly and wisdom never forgets its voice. Weeks passed, and for the first time in years, Miriam's house was quiet, peaceful, but also lonely. The kind of silence that heals and hurts. She still cooked 2 plates of dinner out of habit, still left a light on in the hallway like she used to when Angela came home late, but the door stayed closed. Beloved, sometimes peace comes at a price, and sometimes silence is the only language a broken heart understands. Then one morning, Miriam's phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Mrs. Thomas?" the voice asked. "This is Officer Daniels. We have your daughter here." Miriam's heart nearly stopped. What happened? She came to report a case of fraud against her aunt. Fraud? Aunt Celia? Miriam drove down to the station, unsure whether to cry, pray, or prepare for more chaos. When she arrived, she found Angela sitting in a corner, face pale, eyes swollen. Gone was the arrogance, the anger. She looked like the little girl Miriam once held after every nightmare. Angela looked up. "Mom," she whispered. Miriam's lips trembled, but she steadied herself. "What happened, Angela?" Angela's hands shook. "Aunt Celia, she took the money from Dad's old account, the one she told me you stole." Miriam blinked. "What?" "She forged documents in my name," Angela continued, sobbing. "She used me to get to the money. I thought you were the one lying, but it was her all along." Beloved, truth doesn't always come early, but it always arrives. Sometimes it walks slowly through pain and shame, but it comes. Angela said the police had tracked transfers leading directly to Celia's account. She had been under investigation for months. Miriam listened quietly as her daughter poured out everything, the manipulation, the guilt, the nightmares that followed. "I couldn't sleep anymore," Angela said. "I kept hearing your voice, calling my name like when I was a child. I wanted to hate you, but I couldn't. Not really." Miriam's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Angela," Angela looked up. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." Miriam reached across the table, her voice soft but strong. "Forgiveness isn't earned, my child, it's given." Beloved, that's what grace looks like when it wears a mother's face. Not denial, not weakness, just love strong enough to survive disappointment. A few weeks later, Aunt Celia was arrested. Fraud, forgery, manipulation. The court found overwhelming evidence. Her greed had finally caught up with her. Miriam didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She simply thanked God for closure. Angela moved back home for a while after that. The first few days were awkward, 2 strangers learning how to be family again. One evening, while washing dishes, Angela said softly, "I remember when Dad used to sing while doing this." Miriam smiled faintly. "He said dishes wash better when the house is full of laughter." Angela looked down. "I want to bring that back, Mom. I want us to laugh again." And right there, between soap bubbles and silence, healing began. Months passed, and slowly the light returned to Miriam's home. Angela started helping with the foundation her father had once supported. She apologized again and again, but Miriam always gave the same answer: "What's past is paid for." One morning, Miriam handed Angela an envelope. Inside was a letter, the same one Thomas had written years ago. Angela's hands trembled as she read it. "To my children, honor your mother, for she carries the peace of this family in her hands." Tears streamed down Angela's face. She whispered, "He knew." Miriam nodded softly. "He always did." Beloved, the real inheritance wasn't money, it was wisdom. It was love that outlived lies. 1 year later, Miriam's health began to decline. Nothing severe, just the weight of years and time. Angela took care of her tirelessly, cooking, reading to her, even singing her father's old songs. And one afternoon, as the sun poured golden light across the curtains, Miriam whispered, "I'm proud of you." Angela smiled through tears. "I just want you to be happy, Mom." Miriam reached for her hand. "I am, because I finally got my daughter back." Beloved, that's how it ended. Not with revenge, but with redemption. Not with anger, but understanding. Miriam didn't change her will again. She didn't need to. Her daughter had already inherited what mattered most: grace. So maybe if you're watching this right now and someone you love has hurt you deeply, I want you to remember this. The story isn't over just because the pain began. Sometimes it takes time for truth to find its way home, but it will. It always does. Drop a comment below, beloved, and tell me where you're watching from, and if this story spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that forgiveness is power, not weakness. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Unbroken Courage for more stories that heal, strengthen, and inspire. Until next time, stay wise, stay kind, stay unbroken.